Okay.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I've only watched one video.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome once again.
It's kind of that's so.
Okay, so today in our Enneagram journey, we're up to the number 8. And as always, we have a little humorous video that gives us a sampling of the various types. And this one is about cooking. So, it'll start with the 1, go to the 2, all the way through the 9. It'll show you the different approaches and styles of the various numbers. Here we go with the 1.
I always use a scale to make sure I accurately measure 2 milligrams. That's way too much. No, we are not going out to eat. I am cooking this until I get it right. I don't care if it's midnight. What is this, like the Soviet style table setting? I don't really know how to cook for 1, so I always cook for 8, even if I'm alone. Do you know what the most important ingredient is for this recipe? It's togetherness. I'm so glad you guys came over today, but maybe next time, give me some warning. Like maybe even ask if it's okay to come over. Because at some point, it's conceivable I might have a life one day. I want to see how fast I can cook this thing. The recipe says an hour. I bet I can do it in 10 minutes. This pancake. I said watch. I am crushing it with this dinner tonight. Call me Guy Fieri. I am waiting for inspiration, alright? I can't just flip a switch and cook. This recipe has been done a million times before. There is no point in doing it again unless I can put my own unique spin on it. I am suffering for this meal, okay? My very soul is in this sauce. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I need to be alone in the kitchen, okay? I need my space. This is going to take a lot of mental energy. I'm just preparing myself. You know, when you think of cooking as a science experiment, it's actually quite fun. Safety first, am I right? Whoever wrote this recipe, I'm not sure I trust them. I mean, anyone can write a cookbook nowadays. Julia Child? Call me when she's Julia grown woman. I can't decide if we should have spaghetti or lasagna for dinner, so we're just not going to eat anything tonight. Hey man, what do I look like? A frickin' nerd? First thing you need when cooking is wine. Check and double check. Okay, everyone, I forgot to buy groceries, so let's go to Chipotle. You do not say yeah to me, okay? You say, yes, chef. Got it? It's cold. It's stone cold. You could have killed someone. It's raw. Oh, you're a big boy, aren't you? Lose some weight. You donkey. Hey, everyone, I have literally no preferences whatsoever, so just tell me what you want for dinner. Okay, I'm trying to accommodate everyone's weird diets for dinner, so that basically leaves us with having ice, okay?
Okay. And remember, if you come across a really funny YouTube like that, be sure and let me know, because there's lots of stuff out there. So, last week we talked about the 7s. Any leftovers from last week for the 7s? We had 3 7 5 couples. Wow. That's very interesting. And we had 7 7s. All right.
I was just wondering, do you find very often that couples have the same number? Is that rare?
Well, it's in the Sacred Enneagram. He does a breakdown of sort of the breakdown of the types that marry each other. I do think that certain types like certain other types. Like I know ones like 9s and 2s. So if I look at who my friends are, they're 9s and 2s. And 7s. Yeah, I mean, you know,
How can you not like a 7?
yeah. Not to say that I don't have friends in all categories, but in fact, I'll be talking about one today.
Does this have anything to do with the fact that the line goes between 5 and 7?
Possibly, yeah. Which, you know, because again, you're going to understand where your line goes to. You go on that line. So you understand that type. And then the type that comes to you, your space, you know, you're also going to have kind of an affinity with them. So as I said, when you start out, you already have 5 numbers that you're sort of strongly connected to. So if we go to the app, which is the Ennea app, you see there. So is there anybody here for the first time? I thought so. So let me give you a handout. It's not a, you know, it's just a basic kind of a handout. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you.
And we do have a sign-up sheet, and I am intending to send out that it's the 3 paragraphs, and the 3 paragraphs you pick one from the first category and one from the second, and it's supposed to be really good at helping you discover your number. So if you're still baffled, don't worry. You know, I'll send that out to the email list this week. And as always, we're uploading videos every week, and I did the makeup video for the 6s. It's a little shorter, but so they're all on there at Unity in the Gold Country on YouTube. So you can always go back and look at one of the previous presentations. So as I was saying, today now we're going to be talking about the 8. And the 8, obviously, its own type, but it has 2 wings, the 7 and the 9, next door. So that's 3 numbers that you're familiar with. And then the 8 is linked to the 2, and it's also linked to the 5. So those different types should be of interest, should sort of generate some energy for you, that there's a connection to these numbers. So let's do kind of a quick overview of the 8. The virtue of the 8 is innocence. That's really what the 8 wants to experience, rediscover their innocence. And all of the numbers, really, all of us are looking to rediscover our innocence. And we're trying to do it in our own unique way for different reasons. And the basic desire that the 8 has is to protect themselves. And this is why they come across as so aggressive, or so in your space, or in your face, or forward. Again, you know, you hear me talk about there's sort of 3 categories of the numbers. There's the one that's sort of withdrawing, the numbers that are withdrawing. There's one that's sort of managing, controlling in its own space. And then there's the one that's going forward with its energy. And this is definitely going forward. The other number that goes forward with the same type of energy is the subtype of the 4. And they can be mistaken for each other. You can think that that type of 4 is an 8, but in fact they're 4. But they can come across as very aggressive. Their basic fear is that of being harmed, being controlled, or being violated. And we'll get into all of this more. And so their fixation then, in terms of protecting themselves, is to be vengeful. They want to sort of strike back. It's like the snake that wants to bite you or hit you because you've, in their perception, done something that they didn't like, and they're going to get you back. The passion then is lust. So it's, and again, you know, we talk in these terms. It's not maybe the traditional sense. It's more of a just grabbing everything. That kind of, somehow this is going to protect me, and you know, bring back my innocence if I can get it all.
So it's greedy more than lust?
It's Well, but it's more than just greed. It's this very passionate, out there energy, grabbing everything, is sort of how it comes across.
It's the intensity.
The intensity, yeah. So the direction of integration for the 8 is the 2 energy. So the 2 is that, comes across as very warm, very loving, very of service to others. So that's where the 8 needs to go for integration, to grow and evolve. Where the 8 goes to in times of disintegration is the 5. And again, the 5 is that sort of the observing number, the owl, who also is gathering, gathering information and hoarding information. So that's not a good mix for the 8. When you go to disintegration, it's almost like you're continuing with the approach that's not really that great for you. So they felt the attack as a child on their innocence and virtue, and they often grew up in unsafe environments, or, I always caution, their perception was that it was an unsafe environment. It doesn't necessarily mean that that was true, but that was their perception. It can be that the parent was too intrusive, that they didn't have any autonomy. The parent was always helicoptering and stepping in and making decisions for them. And so they just feel like they have no autonomy themselves. They're overwhelmed. Sometimes they had to stand up for themselves if they were bullied, for instance, and so they had to grow up and protect themselves, they felt. So then what they have done by way of reaction is to try and build up their own strength. It's like, I'm not going to let anybody get the better of me. Their communication style is quite bold, it's strong, it's sort of aggressive. I was in a Unity Ministers group the other day, and there was an 8 in the group, and I know it's just thoughtlessness, but she is so abrasive in her comments, and it's just like slap, and of course, I want to slap back. But I don't. But it triggers you. It triggers you, and that's a real key thing about an 8. So when you find someone who just seems unreasonably like that they're always just poking you and pushing you and in your face and sort of almost being nasty, that's a lot of the 8 energy. And what they're trying to do is, in a sense, lay down the rules. They're trying to show you who's boss. I'm going to be in charge of this relationship. And they also want to see, will you fight for yourself? Will you stand up for yourself? Can I trust you? Because they actually feel better if you kind of slap back, because then it's like, okay, this person has a backbone. And they'll have more respect for you. Yeah. They can be highly opinionated, sometimes just for the sake of getting reactions. So, I'm pretty sure I have a brother who's like this. Because he was always the one in the family who would stir the pot and say something just to get a reaction out of, my mom or my dad or whoever. And I could never understand it. That was so alien for me, because I was all about wanting, peace and love and kindness, and he just seemed to take, joy out of the fact that he got someone all stirred up. So you may have characters like this in your life, and they may be 8s. They don't suffer fools easily, of course. They have a knack for sussing out people who are not authentic or not real. They shock people, they challenge your boundaries first, so that, as I said, they can have a sense then of how they're going to be in relationship with you, or whether they want to invest their energy in you. So they can dismiss people pretty quickly. They fear being destroyed and being controlled, and resist anything that makes them slow down, feel interrupted, or cut off. So, you know, they're the one who will walk right into the group and into the spotlight and just have no problem with taking over. Overdo anything that makes them feel alive, even if it leads to self-harm. So there's that lust kind of thing. You know, they're not great with boundaries in that respect. Often find themselves laying down their guard around children. And it's said that the Achilles heel of the 8 is the innocent child, especially the suffering child. That if you can put them in touch with their inner child who felt, you know, harmed or bullied or overwhelmed, that it's like turning a key. You will suddenly see a lot of this behavior just kind of stop, and they come into touch with what's really going on inside of themselves. Again, it doesn't always happen, but that's said to be the key. So I'm just going to read a little bit here from Christopher Kurtz, and this is the Sacred Enneagram. The most driving dynamism of all the Enneagram types is found in the energy of the 8s. They're a source of strength and determination, an initiating and intimidating force of vitality in the world. A dear friend married to an 8 once told me, "They aren't as hard as they come across, but they are as mean." Not a great recommendation, Yelp review. As Father Richard Rohr suggests, the 8 exemplifies the fundamental need to be against. So that's sort of their basic stand, is just to be against. So it's almost like whatever position you take, they're just going to go into opposition, because then that's a power position, you know. 8s are against everything. Even when they agree, they'll find a way to turn anything into a sparring match or a competition. This is how 8s build trust. Through pushing and fighting, it's their attempt to size up the trustworthiness of others. An unconscious way of determining if people will stand up to them by standing up for themselves. Can you just punch it all the way up? You'll observe 8s being rude or even offensive, trying to get a reaction out of people to see what they're made of. This behavior is partly due to their childhood wound, an acceleration of maturity as a result of conflict or harsh environments where they felt they needed to be strong in order to survive. The self-survival instincts of 8s informs their basic fear of being destroyed. Though I think more accurately, it is the fear of not being in control. As children, 8s typically felt smothered, most likely by their nurturing caregiver. And so, in an effort not to be controlled by nurturing love, they rejected it and over-identified with their protective stance in the world. Ultimately, this is yet another way they exert control, by not being controlled. So in relationships, for the better part, they're the one who's going to be in the power position. They're not going to be in a, you know, a downward sort of position with their partner. They'll want to dominate that relationship. So there's a lot of intensity with 8s. 8s hate bullies, but they're the biggest bullies of all. So, you know, isn't that all of our problems, that we project you know, who and what we are onto others, and then we try to take them on. Though 8s use their force of personality to try to convince people of their strongly held opinions, they are not so much emotional as they are impassioned. Passionate and forceful is how you might describe them. 8s are extremist in the positions they hold, the vocations they're called to, and the causes they champion. The traditional passion of the 8 is lust, not necessarily sexual lust, but more like a lust for intensity, which is aimed toward everything. Sometimes this lust is manifested in self-destructive behaviors, which is ironic in the light of their basic fear. Because 8s fear that they will be destroyed, they overdo everything to make themselves feel alive. So you're getting that sense, you know, somewhat like the 7 energy, where it's sort of like it's about this intense energy and experience. The 8s have that as well. They even overdoing things that are harmful. This often leads to tremendous pain for themselves and those they love. But it doesn't mean that they're going to change their behavior. So, you know, they will go through relationships probably pretty fast, because people just get burned out, you know. 8s are frequently feared in the community because of the havoc they can wreak. Yet the messes they make are part of how 8s grow, like a catapult for growth. The farther backward they stumble, the farther forward they fly in their revival of recovery. So they also have this great ability, you know those things that are air, you knock them over and they bounce back. It's like the 8 is not going to lie down. They have this resilience to bounce back. Traditionally, the fixation of the 8 is vengeance, which is first aimed at themselves. No one can be harder on 8s than themselves, and in turn, 8s can be extremely hard on others, demanding more than is fair or realistic, and making people pay for the way 8s feel betrayed by them. So this is the, you know, the snake that's going to get you back. 8s hate to be slowed down, interrupted, or cut off. So when they have the floor, when they're speaking, let them at it, and then when they're finished, you can kind of join in, but don't attempt to cut them off. They are intimidating, and they know it. This isn't unconscious. But it surprises even them, because deep inside they know that they are using their strength to protect the vulnerable child within them, who never seems safe enough to grow up. So when you think about that, it's kind of like, if you can imagine, having this powerful 2-year-old, you know, uncontrollable almost inside of you, running the show. And that's where the source of this energy is kind of coming from. So they're really, as much as they want to be in control, they're out of control because this child is running the show. And they're not really aware of that. 8s with a 7 wing passionately exaggerate, overexert themselves, and excessively indulge their compulsions. They are much more cheerful and warm than 8s with a 9 wing. With a 9 wing, an 8 is capable of holding differences in tension, balancing extremes while still being extreme, and finding ways to collaborate with diverse groups of people. Was there someone asking something? Were you going to say something?
Oh, just that, you know, with all that force that 8s have, would you say that they repel people more than attract people?
Well,
It just seems like they wouldn't have any friends. I was thinking of my brother, because he's always complaining about how lonely he is, but he
Right.
can only see himself. He just repels people.
well, so think about it. If you are dealing with a snake or a scorpion, what do you think is going to happen? People mostly are going to stay away, because you don't want those people for your friends, right? So the people that they attract are going to be other people like them who like to be in that cut and thrust. You know, this is like a battle between an 8 and an 8. So, you know, most of us, depending on our numbers, like if you're a 9 just wants harmony. They're not going to have much time for an 8 who's acting out. A 2 isn't going to feel warm fuzzies around an 8, so they're going to like stay away. So, you know, I mean, just basic human nature. You're not going to want to have deep friendships with them if it's painful.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that, I'm not sure like who all the sources are, but this is like the very unhealthy view of the 8.
Right.
We're seeing only the unhealthy,
Right,
because there's
but that's-
Martin Luther King. and
That's
there's-
where we're starting. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is, yeah,
Yeah, because healthy 8s are
Yeah.
protected,
Right.
magnanimous. I mean, it's a
Right.
whole different picture.
but at the same time, this is a pretty good description of the 8-ish energy if it's not modified.
If it's unhealthy, yeah.
Wouldn't like a cult leader be an 8, and then the followers would be more submissive? That's
Yeah.
generality, of course.
Right, so I mean, if you are a very complacent, you're looking for leadership from others, then of course an 8 is going to be great for you because they'll lead the way and want you to follow, and as long as you're quiet, you know. But not all cult leaders are 8s either, you know, I mean, it's like, but you could see how that dynamic would work. Now, where was I? Oh, say, yeah, so we were just getting into that. In integration, 8s reach toward the 2. They levy their need to be against at such things as injustice and poverty. So I have a very good friend who is an 8, and she's a very strong personality, but she's also very kind, and she's actually a wonderful friend. And one of her really strong points is justice and fairness. And she was my supervisor. And let me tell you, when she was in my corner, it's like, watch out. I mean, the CFO got put in his place really fast, you know. So she will stand up for her employees, will battle with the CEO, the CFO, it doesn't matter who, it can be the whole world, and they will be your best defender. So that kind of service to others for fairness and justice for people. So it says here, they can show up then as very generous and loving. Mother Teresa, with whom he says I spent quite a bit of time, is probably the most commonly mistyped 2. She clearly was an integrated 8. So again, it's that service piece and it's giving piece that can look very 2-ish, but I think you kind of sense that Mother Teresa wasn't a warm fuzzy, like she wouldn't sit and, you know, that there's this strong energy there.
Oh, this just took me back to the 60s in Chicago, 68, the convention and all that, and all the peace marches and stuff. The people that organized that, I would bet, were 8s. And a lot of us joined in, but that same thing, peace, justice, get out of Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. So I'm assuming there was a lot of 8 in these floating around.
Right, well, LBJ Johnson,
Civil rights, the whole bit.
LB Johnson, president,
Was he an 8?
he was an 8.
Oh,
And look what he did. So
Yeah.
you have the social
Martin Luther
rights,
King.
yeah.
Martin
That was
Luther
a huge
King.
decade for change, man.
Yeah. So it's a steeliness. I think someone was saying that Sanders. Bernie, because you can feel that edge, you know, and it's just strong and it's impassioned.
And justice is
And,
huge.
yeah. So in disintegration, 8s who can't get their way through presence and force take on the mental reductionism of the 5s. They use keen insight into people to reduce them to the most easily manipulated fragment of their whole. So you could see how, like you were talking about cult leaders, that it's almost like then they just look for weaknesses. They look for your vulnerabilities, and then they just go after that. The virtues of 8s is innocence, which is awakened through vulnerability. So the thing that they really need to get in touch with is their own vulnerability. When an 8 is with a child, you see their innocence emerge. It's as if the 8 knows they can't be controlled by a little child. They don't need to fight a child. Their propensity to assume protective roles makes them careful to look out for those who are vulnerable. Now, again, not all 8s do that. I mean, this is the general template that we're working off of. But there are some 8s who are not interested in justice. The only thing they're interested in really is themselves. They're kind of like out of control in that energy. And so we know that about each of these types. There's a whole spectrum. A child mirrors back to 8s what they can't see for themselves. Potential and possibility stuffed behind the illusion of power, which, if left unchecked, is a source of pain to themselves and those around them. So that's sort of the overview. And you know, one of the challenges with the Enneagram that I find is that there are certain numbers that it's really hard to sort of do the balanced presentation, because it sort of comes across a little off-kilter already, because, you know, especially with the 8s, because they're so powerful, that's off-putting for most people. The 4s, because of, you know, the inward self-absorbed energy, it can be really difficult to present them as positively as some of the other numbers. So, you know, I'm just, again, reminding us all that these are all good people here around the circle. We all have our weaknesses and strengths. So, you know, if I'm presenting it where it sounds like it's all negative, then that's not my intention. But it's kind of hard to talk about some of the stuff without feeling like, oh, you know? Okay, where we go here? 8s. All right, so we talked about the passion, we talked about the fixation, the childhood wound. The focus of attention is external, it's that energy moving out, going forward. It's reactive, you know, they're always pushing your buttons or poking, and it's very assertive. The motto for the 8 is my way or the highway. So they assert control over their self and the environment, powerful lives lived with gusto. So we can look at the strengths there. We can look, these are people who really achieve, and there are people who do a lot and try to squeeze the last drop out of the orange or the lemon. You know, that's their approach to life. And this strategy leads to excessive conflict and disruptive relationships, because most of us don't want to live life at that level, and you kind of have a sense of being dragged along, perhaps, by them. Comes from a core belief that it is unsafe to be weak and vulnerable. And again, you know, these are all issues for all of us, regardless of what our number is. Believes that without strength and control, others will take advantage. Their characteristics, they've high need to be in control over everything. This is how they create safety for themselves. They're power-oriented, defiant, demanding, provocative. They will stir the pot. Excessive, wanting a lot, can be materialistic, high intensity. Denial of anything weak or vulnerable. Pain, sadness then underneath because of that. So this is all about integrating our shadow. This is all about admitting that we feel unsafe, that we have fears, that we have this defensive reaction at times to life, and to just be aware of that and to bring it into balance. Difficulty seeing their physical limitations, because their energy is so big that they just feel like invincible. Very strong energy. I was talking with someone just yesterday who was telling me a story about LBJ, that